Let's turn now to South Carolina, where voters are already heading to the polls for the state's Republican primary. It's a critical point in the presidential race that could be make or break for some candidates. According to the latest Wall Street Journal NBC News Marist poll, Donald Trump is still ahead of his rivals, though his lead between Ted Cruz has shrunk down to just 5 points. Marco Rubio and Jeb Bush are battling for third place, while John Kasich and Ben Carson are tied at fourth. A strong showing in South Carolina is crucial for Jeb Bush. He has struggled to connect with voters so far and is hoping to turn his campaign around. In an interview, Bush said he feels good about his chances and also had a blunt critique of frontrunner Donald Trump.
I feel great. I'm always excited on election day. It's all the talking's ending, and you get to meet people that are going to decide the fate of our country in so many ways. We elect a commander-in-chief in our country, as Lindsey Graham said over and over again over the last week, and I'm excited about where we stand. It's interesting that a lot of people claim they're undecided this late, So we'll have to wait and see what the results come out in 7, but I'm going to work hard for the day. We're going to go to a few precincts and have fun. Trump can't win. Plain and simple. This isn't about appealing to people's deep anxiety, which is legitimate. He can't be president. A ton of people would be very uncomfortable with his divisive language and with his inexperience in so many ways. The way he speaks, it's just pretty clear he hasn't thought it through. And we're living in dangerous times. I think we need someone who can be president from day one.
Steve Chaggaris is the CBS News senior political editor. He joins us here in New York City. And Leslie Sanchez is a CBSN political contributor and Republican strategist. She joins us from Los Angeles. So, Steve, to you first. If Jeb Bush doesn't do well here, what does this mean for his campaign?
It's not going to be good. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
I think there's a sense that donors and supporters will start pressuring him, seriously pressuring him to say it's time to go. But we have to see sort of where it falls. Like, does he come in a fourth place but close behind the third place person, or does he get embarrassed? And there are arguments to be made that he can stay in this race. He does still have, or at least his super PAC has a lot of money. But I think, in terms of prolonging what might be, the ultimate demise, what's the point if he doesn't do very well today?
Leslie, Trump is seeing his support shrink a bit, bringing him closer and closer to Cruz. Are people starting to disconnect with him, or what do you make of the shrinking numbers? He had such a commanding lead.
Sure. I think that what's really interesting is there's a really dynamic position that happened during the town halls that happened over the course of the week, where you had some undecided South Carolina voters asking specifically about temperament. And that's really been the undercurrent of people that like Donald Trump. They like his no-nonsense, not politically correct style and his toughness. But does he have the temperament and the ability to bridge gaps to fundamentally move good government forward? And I really believe a lot of those voters may have come away thinking he did not pass that test. And that's created an opening and a lot of momentum for, of all people, Senator Marco Rubio. I think there's a lot of buzz, certainly on social media. He's gaining momentum. And the other critical thing that happened is this issue of credibility with Senator Ted Cruz. That was the one area, if anything, the Achilles heel that the Cruz campaign has. He's so extremely smart. He's so extremely capable. But is he telling the truth? And now he had attacks incoming from both sides, the Trump campaign and Marco Rubio. So kind of all of the dynamics, wondering the temperament of Donald Trump, wondering the veracity and credibility of Ted Cruz is moving this and leading these undecideds to make a decision at the very last minute.
So what about Marco Rubio, Steve? Is there a path for him to win in South Carolina? He had talked about his 3-2-1 strategy, which he says he's on the path of accomplishing.
Well, it's 3-5 at this point.
Right,
He came in fifth in New Hampshire and maybe first in South Carolina, but that's not what the polls are showing.
Right.
So he's got to sort of, fix that 3-2-1 to maybe something else. But, he's got a little bit of momentum in the sense that he had a great debate on Saturday night. He received the endorsement of Governor Nikki Haley, who is extremely popular among Republicans in South Carolina. So the question is, are voters following behind this? We'll find that out today. What we're seeing in the polls is he's pretty much polling third place. What does that mean? That means if he does come in a strong third place, that he has sort of put the disastrous New Hampshire performance behind him, and he can at least make the case that among the anti-Cruz, anti-Trump candidates, that he's the strongest coming out of South Carolina, and try to take that moving forward. Now, you're going to have people like John Kasich who are making the argument look, I'm not even really competing in South Carolina, sort of competing. So anything I get is frosting on the cake. I'm looking at states like Michigan, Ohio, Massachusetts, places where he thinks he's going to do better in future contests, Super Tuesday and later. And so he's going to make the argument that maybe he is positioning himself as a better establishment choice, having come in second place in New Hampshire last week. So
he's
we'll
even
see.
saying that he might drive some people out of the race, no matter what his showing in South Carolina is. What do you make of that?
So, well, I mean, like Jeb Bush or
Yeah,
Ben
that's
Carson?
exactly, I think that.
I mean, again, where does Jeb Bush fall? That's going to really be one number we're going to be looking at very, very closely. If he just doesn't show, if he's in single digits, if he's in a distant fourth or comes in fifth place, I just don't see, again, how he continues with this. And that leaves you Kasich, who's going nowhere. He's already said he's going nowhere. And they're telling us that he's had a big boost in fundraising since his New Hampshire second place finish. And so he's really looking past South Carolina, March 1st, March 8th, March 15th primaries, and really just trying to collect delegates and position himself to be, with Marco Rubio, the alternatives to Trump and Cruz. So we'll see.
Okay, so Kasich basically has a plan in place, but how about Ben Carson, Leslie? What is his plan, and if he doesn't do well here, can he really continue?
Well, when I played pool with Dr. Carson last week,
Great moment, by the way.
when he told me, you know, and you can go back on the photos on CNBC. But actually, what we did talk about is, in reality, he said he wanted to be in that top 3 area and a ticket out of South Carolina. And I asked him directly, you know, do you have the capacity to move forward? He said 2 interesting things. One is that they had raised more money after the South Carolina debate, after the CBS debate, that they had seen previously. So he's talking about money. And 2, his support continues to remain strong. I believe if he's cut the expenses of his campaign, he can keep it very lean, and he will probably keep going if he stays competitive, certainly with Governor Bush.
All right, so Dr. Carson shared some details of this meeting that he had with Senator Cruz about some of the controversy in Iowa that some people are calling a closet meeting. I want to play some sound of that and then ask you guys to remark.
It was an awfully big closet, if it was a closet. Right. There was a table. There was a table and there were chairs, you know, so yeah, call it what you will. But at any rate, yes, we did have a meeting. I didn't realize that it was going to be publicized, but, you know, that is what it is. And, you know, I can tell you what I said. I'm not going to say what Ted said. You know, you can talk to him about that. But I was just a little miffed that people on his campaign would think that after months and months of very hard work, and having hundreds of volunteers and hundreds of college students sacrifice their time, one of them even gave his life, that 10 minutes before the caucus, I would just walk away and say, you guys are on your own, forget about it. I mean, give me a break.
All right, so you relayed that. You had all this out. Was there, I know last time you were with me, Doctor, you had said that it's one thing to say you're sorry, it's quite another, paraphrasing here, to follow up on it and take some action on it. I think you meant punish some people, maybe fire some people, but what happened?
Well, I would just say that, you know, when I find things that are wrong, such as I did in my own campaign a few months ago, you know, we made changes. You don't just accept it and say, well, it's okay. And, you know, that's what responsible people do.
Did you tell Senator Cruz that?
Of course.
And did he say he would?
Hold my feelings back. Well, like I said, I'll let you talk to him. You have access to him. He can tell you what he said.
All right, well, he hasn't returned our calls, but hope springs eternal. All right, but it sounds to me like nothing got solved here. Nothing got solved.
Well, you know, there is forgiveness, and as you've noticed, I haven't been really talking about it. It's been other people talking about it. You know, I'm ready to move on. It's water under the bridge. We have such important things to do.
You know what they say, good press, bad press. At least you're in the press.
You're in the press.
Steve, is that helping today?
For Carson? Perhaps. But what's interesting about it is it's really, it might be hurting Cruz. And it'll be interesting to see. You've had Trump and Rubio really going after Cruz, suggesting that he's a liar. That started with all of this, with what happened in Iowa. And what's interesting is Carson, when we asked him on CBSN last week after the debate whether he thought Cruz was lying, he wouldn't say Cruz was lying, but he actually did say he thought his staff was lying, which the lying word has been a big part of this South Carolina race so far, and I'm interested to see what kind of effect it has on Cruz. coming from a guy like Carson, who's very well liked among Republicans, it's got to hurt a little more than, say, coming from Trump and Rubio. And I wonder if it's going to have any effect on Cruz. And I also wonder if it's really having any effect on Carson's decision to stick this out. Because really, the types of voters that are going to vote for somebody like Carson are going to vote for somebody like Cruz. And maybe he's taking a few votes away from Cruz. Maybe this is just a little play for Carson.
Leslie, what do you make of that interview?
There's a long history of candidates that stay in longer than they originally were going to just because they're miffed at a contender. So this may have been something that certainly energized Dr. Carson to that extent. I think Steve is exactly right. This has been a tone. He did bring it up a couple of times. I think there are two things. I think Dr. Carson thought he was reducing this lavish spending or this spending within his campaign so he could continue to be viable, and he feels it was a dirty trick. You combine that with the idea of those voter ballots that were happening, and some of this kind of compounding the story of, is Ted Cruz telling the truth? And that's what a lot of evangelicals are coming back with. They're saying, we really like this candidate, but is there something to this point about credibility? So combined together, I do think Steve's right. It could have more of a detrimental effect on Senator Cruz than it will on any other candidate.
Steve, about that credibility issue, Donald Trump, let's talk Donald Trump a bit more. He's been in the press lately, not only for remarks that he made way back when, before he ever decided to run for president, about the Iraq War, about his support for Planned Parenthood. Then you have the Pope coming out and saying that he's not Christian, although now there seems to be a detente that's happened there. Can that at all affect Mr. Trump's still leading this GOP race?
We've asked this question after every single time.
And can he keep saying his position has evolved? Is that enough for voters?
Well, the question is what do voters want? Voters want, at least according to polling, they want somebody who's going to go in and shake up Washington, right? And I think they're listening to what he's saying now and not listening to what he said in 1999, right? And so if they believe that he is as hardline on immigration as he's selling himself, if they believe he's as hardline on abortion and on guns as he's saying he is now, it seems as if the voters that are supporting him don't really care what he said in the past. This is what he's saying now. They believe it, and they also believe that he's the type of guy that's going to go in and fix things in Washington. And so that seems to be the recipe that's working for him right now. We'll see. I mean, I just have not seen any of these remarks, whether it's his remarks from before or remarks currently, that have any kind of negative effect on him. And it's really interesting because so the Pope, for example, that was just a classic example of no one else getting any airtime whatsoever. It was all about Donald Trump, and it was an issue, frankly, that I didn't see how it could really hurt him much in South Carolina. Not a lot of Catholics in South Carolina. Evangelical Christians, of which there are a lot of in South Carolina, don't necessarily love the Pope. So it's sort of a no-lose situation for Trump, and all anybody's talking about is Trump. No one was talking about Cruz, no one was talking about Rubio, and so all those guys are on the back page while Trump is on the front page.